Welcome to Mortgage Mom Wines, a weekly podcast with real and relatable talk and advice for real women. I'm your host, Megan. Grab your extra large coffee or glass of wine, no one is judging, and let's grow together. Hey there, we are back and I'm here with Stephanie to talk all things podcasting today. I'm going to let Stephanie give a brief introduction of herself. She is a mom like me. She is a businesswoman, an entrepreneur. She is all the things like all of us are. So I want her to give a brief introduction of herself and tell us a little bit about her.
Hi guys, my name is Stephanie, like Megan said, and I am a podcast and production person, I guess, producer. I go underneath my business, which is a publishing house, and so I own the business. I am a mom of four. I've been married for 14 years, and so we are a veteran family. So just very similar to Megan is that I carry the veteran title with my husband. Well, he does. I just got to carry along with that fun.
You're just married to it.
I married into that one. I signed along with him. And so I do a lot of things on top of just, I'm a stay-at-home mom, but my other joy is definitely talking podcasts and sharing testimonies. So if that's in a book form, that's a book. Otherwise it's podcasting. So that's my joys.
But this Stephanie, I wanted to have Stephanie on one of the first episodes because she is who inspired me to do my podcast. And finally, I decided to just take the leap and get started and not make excuses anymore. And she was kind of the inspiration behind that. She had asked me to be a guest on her podcast and I really, really enjoyed it. It was such a great time. And I'm like, I can do this. There's an audience for this. Like, why not give it a shot? And here we are. So I thought she'd be a great person to have as a first guest. And funny story too, just to give you some history. Stephanie and I went to high school together. So we've known each other for years and years and kind of reconnected and have, obviously gone off and married and have families and lived in separate states and all these things. But it's funny how something like a podcast or social media can bring you back together. So I wanted to point that out because I'm like, social media is not all bad. Right. We don't have to hear all the negativity. It can be good because it brought us here today. So again, I want to just kind of go through some things with you, Stephanie, and like how you got started in the whole podcasting thing. Like how do you get started? Because I can tell you just from somebody who's just starting their podcast and being a woman in business and all the things. I always say all the things. As moms, we have to be all the things. As women, we're expected to do all the things. Why podcasting? Like, share your story about how you got started with podcasting.
So I started with Facebook Lives. So I would go on and I called them morning motivations, where I would share just a clip of something to help others be inspired. That was something that I've always felt. So I started my original business as a health and wellness coach in the middle of COVID. So I was homeschooling my kids. It was the middle of COVID. Chris was still working. And so I just was like, so many people need to hear the positivity. Like whether you're stuck at home, you've got kids and you're remote schooling, you're doing all these things. Like it was a mass chaos moment. And I felt
louder for the people in the cheap seats. I'm telling you.
I felt like it was just a moment of chaos. And I wanted everybody to understand, like, you're doing great. Like you can do this, keep going, and being a voice of positivity in the midst of what felt so heavy and dark. And so it started as Facebook Lives. I'd go on daily, and I had a mentor who became a friend.
You're jumping to my next topic. I was going to ask if you had a mentor, so that's perfect.
I do / did. And I was talking and they were like, he kept telling me, he's like, why you already do a podcast? And he was like, you should do one. And I was like, are you crazy? Like a podcast? I'm not cool enough for a podcast. And
right. That's what I thought too.
And I was like, and that's a lot of work. Like, I don't have all the equipment. I don't have a sound room. Like, I don't have all that. And he was like, It's your phone. Like, it just record off your phone. You're already doing it. Why not take your Facebook Live and go to a wider audience, get it worldwide and go all in? And I was like, okay, I mean, I guess I am already doing it. What's the difference? Instead of having an algorithm push it out or have my audience only be the people on Facebook, why not go to a wider audience? Sure. I mean, and I was very skeptical. I will be the first one to tell you, I was like, sure, this is going to flop.
Yeah.
And I started it, and within 3 months, I was far beyond. Like, I mean, I was hitting thousands of plays by
Wow.
3 months in. And he goes, I told you. He goes, see, this is what you need to be doing. And so it has just been expanding ever since then. And I have veered into not just one podcast. So I have my health and wellness one, but I also now co-host a podcast with a friend of mine that is called Life in the Military Spouses Edition, where we talk over different topics military wise, but coming from the spouse's perspective. We're both military spouses, and it's kind of fun just to, we brought our guys on an episode. We've talked all different conversations.
I love
but
that.
my Sweet Disaster podcast was the original. It's my baby. It started it all. And it's been, I was coming on daily.
Wow.
And
So you did a podcast every day.
Every day I would record. I didn't go with visuals. I just strictly did audio. But it was everything from a 5-minute episode to a 30-minute episode. I started eventually after a couple of seasons. I brought in guests, and I would interview other people within different industries.
I want to point that out, what you said, 5 minutes to 30 minutes. It doesn't, and that's where I was overthinking when I first started this. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about for an hour? What am I going to, like, I need to have this whole outline and this structure and all these things. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, as moms and as women in business, we're not scripted. Our life is not scripted. Like, what people want to listen to, it's like your reality show, right? So I love what you said, that like a 5-minute episode, sometimes maybe you just want to click play and listen to 5 minutes of encouragement.
And that's what it was. It was literally like, if I got, like, I call them God promptings, where they were just like, you need to share this, right? Whether it was from just a thought, a thing I saw on social media, a lesson. I do, some of them are lessons from my kids. Like, my kids will say darndest things. And sometimes I have to just share, like, man, that was a huge takeaway, or that was a cool thing. And my kids are
our greatest inspiration.
Yeah. And it was cool because I had, like, I didn't shy away from having my kids in the room with me. I didn't shy away from having the washing machine going, and it didn't have to be pretty, and it didn't have to be perfect, because the whole point was that I was coming as a mom to other moms and talking to you. I want you to understand the point of what I'm here for. I'm not here to judge. I don't care. I still have laundry going. My kids are screaming. They're probably fighting each other. And it was just this idea that, like, you're still doing it. You've got this, you know?
Yeah, you got this. I love it.
And so that's what started that. And in our Life in the Military one is another fun one. We still have kids in the background, and you'll hear kids, and it's this raw and real. We don't edit a lot, because I'm like, I want you to hear reality. Like, that's, I look at podcasting as a way to connect with an audience, right? Because if you're spending time listening, I'm not going to be, I might stumble on a word. I might not have the right word, right? Like, I'm not perfect. So I'm not
reality.
Going to pretend to be perfect.
And nobody's perfect, right? There, I said it. Nobody,
exactly.
From one recovering perfectionist to another.
Exactly. Like, you and I are both very type A personalities. We like our order. We like our things in perfection, and we try and aim for it. But you know what? There's going to be moments where inspiration hits, and you just have to go with it. And other moments where you're like, this is not an ideal place to be doing anything, but I'm going to, right?
It's real. Yeah. Let's show other people. And I think that's awesome, that the real side of it is so important, and something I thought as a perfectionist, or now I call myself a recovering perfectionist. Because we're not doing that anymore. Nothing's perfect. We're not trying to be perfect. There's too much stress and anxiety that come with that. And I think as moms and as women in our businesses, at home, and all aspects of our life, we're trying to, like, live up to this perfect image. And it's cool to get here, have this platform as a podcast and have listeners to be able to show that it's not perfect. And that was my roadblock for doing this, was I was like, I don't have all the equipment. I don't know how to edit. I don't have time to edit. I'm a loan officer, right? And I have 2 kids and I have a house to maintain and all the things. I'm doing all these things. I can't sit here and edit a podcast. And then I realized I don't have to. It doesn't have to be. There's people like Stephanie that can help, or there's that, just give you that little bit of guidance and get you started. And it's really, really cool and it's a really good feeling to just do it and just put yourself out there. And so I would encourage you, if you're thinking about starting a podcast or anything like that, like reach out to me, reach out to Stephanie, like we'll get you going. And because you shared something on your story the other day that was like, your story needs to be told. People want to hear your story. And I'm thinking, who the heck wants to hear but you talking, especially now about the military spouse thing, that's a part of my life that's over, right? It's long in the past. And sometimes I like to keep it there. I like to keep it in the past because it was a really hard time in my life. Being married to the military is hard, right?
Yeah.
So it's something I don't always like to talk about, but when I do talk about it, it feels good. So that's kind of, and now I have other ideas for future episodes, right? So it's really cool. I appreciate you definitely coming on here and sharing all of that. And hopefully we encourage somebody to get off the fence and just do it. Take a risk like me from one perfectionist to another. And what were your goals with podcasting? Like when you set out to do it and you started it, like what you already went over, like the topics and things that you covered, but like, what were your goals with it? Did you have expectations?
To be totally honest, like I said, when my mentor first told me to go and do it, I literally looked at it and went, this is going to flop. And cause I was like, nobody's going to want to listen to me. Like, right. Like my Facebook lives would only get 1 or 2 people watching. It was probably my parents. And I was just like, whatever, like husband. I truly, genuinely didn't think it was going to go anywhere. And I am now in 15 countries. It's been streamed across the world. Like it's super cool, but it was the idea that I walked in with little to no expectations. My expectation was to touch one person's lives, like one life a day. Like if I get on, I want one person to be impacted by what I did, right? Because I live by this mentality of I want to make my ripples count, meaning I want to make an impact positively on others in everything I do.
Starts with one ripple.
If I can help somebody else by sharing my story, whether I was like you, I wanted to keep certain topics in the past and let's just leave them there. They need to be buried. Like we're not going to unearth anything.
Right. We're not going to open up that wound.
Yeah. I don't, it's like very much so like, just leave it there. And I learned quickly that my story matters. And there are plenty of other people who have been in similar boats or are in the midst of it or any of that really truly want a guide, help, support, to not feel alone. I've been on other podcasts where I was an episode of it was called, I think it was something about Rise of the Phoenix or something like that. And it was about suicide prevention. Wow. And as a suicide prevention person, like I have a whole like semicolon tattoo, and I've been through those stages of my life where I kind of wanted to keep it quiet. And I sat on this podcast and it was one of the most incredible things just to be able to share with others, like there's light on the other side of this. Like, it's okay.
And there's healing through sharing.
Absolutely.
It's very healing.
And so for me, I didn't really have an expectation of it. I went where it went, like was kind of how I played it. I didn't have like, oh, I have to hit this amount of, plays by this point or any of that. Like it was fun just watching it grow and not having a worry about the numbers, because as somebody in business, we worry about, okay, how many views did this get? How many likes did this get? We're so consumed by the numbers and the analytics that I literally just went, this is my space to just share my joy.
Love it. And I think we, like what you said about the number of likes and views and how we're in such a world where it's dictated by like how many likes you got on your Facebook post or how many, and I work with in business, kind of we're going to shift gears to business a little bit here. I work with a lot of like social media coaches, and I'm in a lot mastermind groups and things like that. And it's funny how their message as social media coaches and stuff. Yes, there's such a thing as social media coaches. It's shifted to like, it's not the quantity, it's the quality. So
Yes.
like you might only have 100 followers on Instagram, but if there are 100 of the right followers for your business, that's all you need. You don't need 1 million followers on Instagram. You don't need 1 million plays on your podcast. You don't need that. You just need one. And you said that earlier, which really stuck out to me. The CEO of my company always says that if it helps one. So there's 10,000 people that might work for your company, but if your share helps one person, or if you're listen, let's say you only get, and I have to look in the mirror when I say this all the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, that video only got 500 views. And I'm like, it shouldn't be, oh my gosh, it's only 500 views. It should be, holy cow, 500 people watched that.
Yeah.
Like you
and
gotta flip the script.
I had somebody put it into perspective for me. Is like, okay, say you stood on a stage and you talked to just one person. Now think about that room and going that same stage and you talk to 10 people. Now you're on that same stage and you're talking to 500 people.
Right.
Think about what that feels like to stand on a stage with 500 people all staring at you. That's literally what just happened to your social media.
Right.
Now, the same thing can happen with podcasts. Like there's episodes that I have like 2 plays on. Cool, got it. Now I have 22 subscribers. So most of the time, or followers, and most of the time I can now get anywhere up to 10 to 15 on a consistent basis, which is great because out of those 22 people that immediately get notified, 16 of them are immediately listening because they're the right people. Right. And that's the joy of having this podcast and having a podcast in general, is that you're going to be targeting a specific audience looking for a specific thing. It's not going to just get pushed out by a social media algorithm. It's not just getting pushed out because you shared it. It's literally getting put out there because people are going into certain apps that they know podcasts are going on to, and they're searching a certain topic and your name gets to come up. And that's the great part of it, is that you're going to find people that want to relate and will like you and are your people, right? We all, as a business person, want to look for that ideal client, right? The avatar that we all speak to. And it's like, what does that person look for? What do they want? Who are they? And that's the joy that I think the unscripted and real side of podcasting gets to do, is that it gets to show you. You know, I've met new business people and I've talked to friends who are in, one was a branding person who does all like business branding, and they have a podcast that's all about sports. Wow. And I was like, that's interesting. Why sports? And he's like, because I talk to my ideal client is an athlete who is looking to brand themselves. So what is an athlete going to look for? An athletic podcast.
Love it. Genius. Yeah. And that was kind of like my inspiration with Mortgage Mom Wines. I'm like, I wanted to create a podcast that I could relate to, and that I thought there was kind of a missing piece. And I think as women in business in general, it's hard. As moms, it's hard. As just all the things are hard, right? So I'm like, if we could just have a podcast that's encouraging to women and educating them and talking money. Money was the other thing. That's why it's Mortgage Mom Wines, because it's mortgages and investing, it's momming, and it's a little bit of wine, or today it's my Stanley. But I just wanted a place where like it was safe to talk about money and investing and financing and growing wealth and investing as a woman. And it was safe to talk about, you know, my kids drove me crazy today, or here's how I'm coping with all the things. Like I survive. I always joke, and people, you know, every mom at some point in their life has heard, I don't know how you do it. And my response to that is coffee, Amazon Prime, and Jesus. You know what I mean? Like that's what we're all kind of in this like mode of go, 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 go. So if this podcast for 30 minutes could help somebody get their financial part of their life together, or prepare to invest, or just maybe it's a safe place where we come and we just complain about kids for a little bit, you know, whatever it is, it's something I created that I wanted to share with other people. And I think it's awesome that you, especially during COVID, recognize like we need some encouragement and inspiration and positivity in this dark time. And with the military spouse, as a former military spouse, I can totally relate to that. I wish back when I was a spouse that I had other spouses to listen to, right? Because that would have been such a source of, I'm not alone.
Yep.
And I think as long as we realize that we're not alone. And like you said, 16 listeners, that's 16 people that you touched and helped that day. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I hope, if you take one thing away from today's episode, it's, well, I lied, two things, take away two things.
Yeah.
Just start.
Yes.
And if it helps one.
Yep.
Because don't be obsessed with like the number of views and clicks and subscribe. And I know there's going to be all kinds of haters that are like, Megan, you're starting this podcast. You're crazy. Like, you do mortgages. What the heck are you doing a podcast for? There's always haters, right? But haters
it's a form, it's, I look at it and I'm like, yes, you're doing mortgages. And I look at it and go, I think first off, there's not enough women within the financial world sharing financial tips. Like, as another woman, I am super excited, not just because of being a friend, not just because of the business relationship we have, but because of the topic you're talking about. I want to follow. I want to learn. As a woman, I want to hear finances from another woman. Like, I don't want to be talked to or talked down to. And I feel like sometimes the financial world, because it's such a male dominated thought process, can get that way.
Yeah. Like you have Dave Ramsey, right? Telling you all these things. Gosh. And it's like, shut up, Dave. Like, no, you don't get it. You're not a millennial. Right. You don't get it. You're not in the grind. You're not raising 4 kids. You have $1 million, multi-million dollar. You like, you don't get it.
Right. And like you said, when it came to the life in the military, when we started that, we both literally, after I was in 7 years, my friend is in 20, I think she's going on 20 years.
God bless her.
I mean, he's got his retirement packet in, but we both looked at it and we were like, we would have done so much better, or what we would have wished was that this was available for us.
What I wish I knew.
Right.
I was like, I'm going to share and educate people on what I wish I knew. Hence the mortgage mom, right? If your mom didn't teach you, this mortgage mama's gonna, because
but everybody has something, you know, and I've seen every podcast from how many true crime podcasts are out there, but it's,
oh my gosh, so many. All my friends rage over those.
And I joke about it all the time. I'm like, everybody's like, oh, the podcasting world is becoming saturated. I was like, but it doesn't have your voice.
Facebook isn't saturated.
Exactly. That's
Instagram isn't saturated. That's the worst objection ever.
I mean, but it gets so many people. They're like, I can't do that. It's too saturated. And I'm like, but you're sitting here promoting on Facebook all day long. You're going to tell me that's not saturated. But on top of it, your voice is different than everybody else. Like, you are one of one, not one of a million. You are not one of 1,000. You are literally one of one. There's only you.
I love that. You're one.
So why are you not sharing? Like, so many people tell me, they're like, it's just that you add this slip of humor in when it's like so dreary, you add this slip of humor in. And I'm like, yeah. That's me, right? Like,
that's your personality.
But that's what sets everybody apart. And so no industry is ever too saturated. There's never a story that can't be told. There's never anything. So like you said, just start. Yeah. And you mentioned before, and it's super funny because I was like, I thought the same thing of like, I'm so busy. I'm just this. I can't do all of these things. And I don't like doing X, Y, and Z, right? There's always somebody out there that like loves doing that, right? You don't edit. But I get nerding out over editing and putting it all together and making it all.
I can't handle it. I can't handle it.
I love that. I love that. So that's the best part, is that sometimes there's a part of it, like, you just pressing play is all that's required.
Yeah.
Somebody else can fluff it up for you. Somebody else can make it look pretty. Somebody else can do all the other things. There's a part of business that is called delegating. Do what you're good at, and then delegate the rest. Like,
I had to remember, that's the biggest thing I'm learning as I get older. And as I've been doing this longer, I have to remind myself, because you can get lost following all these influencers and following all these people. And I have to remember, Megan, you're not a life coach. Like, you're a loan officer. Like, you do mortgages. And here's a newsflash. Mortgages are boring, right? It's boring stuff. But at the same time, I can make it fun. And also it can be a segue into other things. But I'm not a video editor. I'm not a podcast editor. I'm a mortgage loan officer. So if my time is better spent on mortgages, then I need to delegate editing the podcast, editing my videos, because your time is valuable and time is money. And that's more time you could be investing into your family or your business or whatever it is you want to invest in, reading that book, whatever it may be. So I think, and I'm still learning this. I am by no means an expert at delegating. I'm a control freak, probably like the rest of the women listening to this. But as again, every day I tell myself, Megan, you're a mortgage loan officer. You are not a social media influencer.
Right.
And so sometimes you just have to remind yourself that. And so, like I said, if anybody is wanting to get started, doesn't know where to start, or you're like, I want to start a podcast, but maybe I just need a little bit of help, Stephanie is a great person to help guide you and coach you and, not just edit the podcast and get it out there for you, but like hold you accountable. Like it's now that I've signed up like with her, it sounds really corny, signed up with you, but like now that we've connected and I have you helping me, I'm like, it's the accountability. Like I can't not do it. Right.
Right.
That's a double negative. My English teacher would kill me. But again, I'm a mortgage loan officer. I'm not an English major.
And I think that plays a part into like mom life too, is that like as a mom, we feel like, oh, well, I have to have, I got to be Betty Crocker and, Mr. Clean and this and the PTA mom and all of these things. And if that's not you, that's not you. Like, I'll show up to the Christmas party. I'm not going to join the PTA. Like, that's just not me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make sure that their lunches are ready. And I would homeschool them in a heartbeat. If the school's closed, I'd be fine. Other people are like, homeschooling what? No, thank you. And
I was not a homeschool mom.
Then delegate it out. Like that's the difference is we feel like we have to, especially as mom and women, we feel like we have to do it all. We have to carry all the hats and we have to do them all at 100%.
Yeah.
And that is like, there are people out there that, maybe their jam is cleaning. Get them to clean your house so that you don't have to think about it. Like, right. And you're saying time is precious. You only have today or right now is guaranteed. I can't guarantee tomorrow. I can't guarantee anything. But what I can guarantee is right now. So I'm going to live it to the best so that I can look back and be like, I did everything I wanted to. Yeah. So don't hold back.
No regrets.
If it's a podcast or writing a book, don't ever sit there and be like, well, I don't know, or maybe one day, and then you're going to sit there and one day is going to come and you're going to regret it. Oh, I should have wrote that book. Well, yeah, you should. Never too late. Get a pen, get paper, get your computer, just go.
Just go. My word of the year this 2024 is go. So I love that. We're going to end. I love to end on that go note. And I just thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your passion about podcasting and all of the things with us. I appreciate you joining me. I'm sure I'll have you as a guest in the future because we could talk all day. But we're moms and we're busy, right? So we got to go.
Yeah.
But on that note, you're welcome. And if you guys need Stephanie's information, we're going to, do you want to share your information, how they can find you?
Sure. Yeah. You can find me on all of your social medias. On Instagram or Facebook, it's going to be underneath Steph Polcyn. TikTok will be underneath. If you're underneath that one, it is going to be the James C. Books and Publishing is where you're going to find that one, because I actually walk through literally like 3 minutes of how to actually write out your podcast and your content for a year. How to write out your entire book outline. Everything is right there in a 3-minute video of how to do it. So TikTok is probably
follow her on TikTok.
Yes.
If anything.
So we'll link it in the show notes and get you all set up when you guys need it. But otherwise, I am always here, and so is Meg. So make sure you're a part of it.
Thanks, guys. Cheers. See you next time. Thank you for listening. Follow this podcast for more real life and real talk with the occasional whining thrown in there. Red or white, the choice is yours. See you next episode. Cheers.